Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Backlog Banter. My name is Tucker Hazell, and this is Dev Dive, a show where I get a chance to talk to interesting game developers about their games. And today we have a very unique guest. This is Matt Newell, the creator of Lushfoil Photography Sim, a game that I've never played anything else like, because I just don't think there is really anything else quite like Lushfoil Photography Sim. And so we're going to be exploring that game's history, its creation, your story, Matt, as a game's creator. And I'm very excited to finally have you on here. We've gone through a couple technical snafus over the last month and a half trying to get this going, and we're finally doing it. How are you feeling?
Feeling good, man. Yeah. Grateful things are working out. Sorry for the mishaps. Yeah, it's great to be able to chat with you.
Yeah, I'm very excited because, again, there's not really anything like Lushfoil Photography Sim. And so as soon as I saw the game, I think maybe a year and a half ago, something that Annapurna was, who published the game, was promoting it. And I was like, what the heck is this? Like, nobody's really making a game like this. And so let's start with you, though, and your history with video games. What is your history in game development in terms of projects you've worked on before, what you focus on as a designer or a programmer or anything?
Well, I guess my experience in the industry is sort of like non-existent. I graduated university and sort of hopped straight into things. I'm sort of an Unreal Engine hobbyist. Like I started out doing photography and picked up Unreal as something to like sink my teeth into. Photography is very simple and very enjoyable, but with Unreal, I felt like there's a lot more to learn, a lot more to do. So having picked that up, started working on like basic first person exploration kinds of projects. And then that's what led into Lushfoil eventually, picking that up full time to get it finished. And so, yeah, here we are.
Well, you mentioned that the game is at its core a first person exploration game. The photography is sort of what sets it apart because there are plenty of other first person exploration games. But I'm curious if there's any other first person exploration game, or some people use the term walking sim. Is that a genre that you're interested in otherwise? Any of those games that might have inspired you or that you're passionate about? Or is this something you just found when you were making something yourself?
Yeah, definitely. I think all the games that I've played have sort of had a subconscious influence on this project in one way or another. Like I've always like found ideas from different games that I've sort of picked out and then put into this. I definitely love the walking simulator genre. I remember following like some of the dev teams very closely on projects like it started out with the Chinese Room and Dear Esther,
Sure.
and then I also followed the development of games like The Vanishing of Ethan Carter quite closely when I was younger.
Yeah.
I mean, that was a long time ago now. That was like probably like 15 years ago. But they had just a really interesting process on how they like mainly constructed their environments and like did all of their graphics, and having played the game, they had like a really interesting like narrative presentation where it was very non-linear and
Yeah.
could approach things the way you wanted to, which I think people will be very familiar with if they've played Lushfoil. So yeah, I always find it very difficult to describe my project because it's just sort of a weird combination of different things I've been inspired by over the years. But yeah, I think some people who have played the specific games that I've played will know that the inspiration is quite clear.
Yeah, no, I definitely feel that with Vanishing of Ethan Carter and the nonlinearity and the first-person exploration. But are there any other games that might be touchstones for you in the design of Lushfoil that might not be quite so obvious or quite so obviously parallel? Like, okay, walking simulator, but are there other games that are outside of that genre that might have worked their way into Lushfoil?
A little bit like I guess in terms of the look and like the graphics, I was always really inspired by what bigger teams were capable of. Like back when I was getting into
Sure.
Unreal, I was playing games like the first Star Wars Battlefront that came out, which is like in terms of tone, it's like pretty opposite. Like lots of shooting, and yeah, like AAA studios were always capable of like producing the best visuals, and so I was always like interested in what's at the forefront of like graphics and how good things could look in games. I always used to enjoy indies. Like my favorite game is probably like Inside. Do you know the game Inside?
Sure, of course, yeah, but that
Like that game sort of like blew me away. Like in terms of how approachable it was and how much of a story it could tell without any context. Like in that game, you're just a little kid and you
yeah.
just hop into the scene and then you start running and like that's enough. Like
Yeah.
you're sort of absorbed into it with how immersive and atmospheric it is. Yeah, I love games in that kind of vein. Like just games that throw you in without a context. Everyone's played Minecraft. Like, I think the reason that's kind of so enjoyable is without a context, you can just put yourself there. You don't have to like wrap your head around a story or a situation that's going on. You can just like live in your house that you built.
Yeah, of course. You create your own story, your own journey through it. So we talked about your passion for games and what might have inspired Lushfoil on a design level. But what about photography? Talk about your passion for photography. Do you remember when you found that photography was something you were interested in? How long have you been interested in it? What was that like?
Well, I picked it up because I did it as a subject in high school. My school offered it as a subject to learn about how to use a camera, how to use a studio and editing suites and things like that. And yeah, it was my favorite subject. Like I enjoyed messing around with cameras, taking good photos, and it's just sort of a habit that I've continued ever since I got like a reasonably good camera. I started out with like a mid-range like Canon camera, and I just thought it was the best way to remember the stuff that I'd done in a sense. Like if
Yeah,
I'd if I'd
sure.
brought a camera somewhere on a trip or like on a day out, I would always have like a very like clear recollection of what I did that day because I'd have such a good way to
Hmm.
remember it. I mean, these
Yeah.
days I'm sure everyone's the same. Like your phone is the easiest way to capture your day or whatever. But I guess something is somewhat lost with that. Phones can take great photos these days, but yeah, having the ability to like just tune the photos you take and make them look the way you want to look is really like
Yeah, sure.
really personal, really like satisfying. I just love looking back on photos. I do it like pretty regularly. Just like pick a random day in my
Yeah.
camera roll from like 2 years ago. It's like, oh, what did I do on that day? And then just like see what photos I took. I love that kind of stuff.
I like what you said about it being a little bit more granular because you have control when you have a nicer camera of the exposure and the focus and these things that you can kind of do on your phone, especially if you download an app or something. But that does make sense to me as something that would ingrain it a little bit deeper in your memory because you had to tweak it and be a little bit more hands on. It's like how some people have better memory if they've been physically interacting with something. And that's kind of what a nicer camera allows you for is like quote unquote physically interacting with the captured memory that you have, and so it'd stick in your head a little bit better.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. Like using a nicer camera is definitely like a luxury. Like cameras are pretty expensive,
Oh yeah.
but and like there's nothing wrong with like taking all your photos on your phone. The enjoyment of like the process and like when you take photos, it's always your own photos that mean the most to you. I just love photography, man. Like I'm sure it's reflective in the game that I've made. Like the feeling you get to just explore and just have no objective for the day other than just to like walk around. Yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And that is what makes this game distinct is you can tell if you watch any footage of this game or especially if you play it yourself that you care about real photography and that you're actually experienced with it because there's no faking that. Like you wouldn't commit X amount of years of your life to making a game that is simulating photography if you didn't like photography. And so let's talk about the time commitment that what was put into making this game. When did you start working on Lushfoil? You said you started working in Unity after you graduated from college. When did you come to Lushfoil as a photography simulator that was going to be the project that you're working on? How long ago was that?
So it was Unreal that I'm working in, by the way.
Oh,
Yeah.
sorry. Yeah, my bad.
But so I started working on Unreal probably like 2018, and the project was always in like bits and pieces. Like the environments were separate from each other. I was using them for different purposes. I started to create environments with very very light mechanics. The photo mechanics were like not even there. It was just like press the right click button to like take a screenshot of your screen, and that was it. Back in those days, that was like, I think that was like 2020, 2019. I started putting out free demos. Like I
Hmm.
would release the environments like as their own game projects, like free on Steam and itch.io. And so, yeah, just slowly I would do more and more projects. I think I put out 5 separate projects on Steam before I realized I should like make this into something. If I had that many environments, my idea was just to like make a couple more, make it a compilation, make it more like consistent as an experience. I think I was like nearing the end of the main project when I'd been in contact with Annapurna for the first time. Like I was just starting to pitch it out. I was thinking like, yeah, we can get this released soon. So I started pitching to publishers, and they were super amazing, supportive. They were what allowed me to really put a lot of focus on the project in the last 3 years, like a very
Yeah.
concentrated effort. Yeah, just a really long, involved process. I think it's sort of become somewhat of a burden in like the last couple of years, just because I'm sort of fighting with code that I wrote like 6 years ago. I'm sure like,
Yeah. You've learned a lot.
yeah, some other developers might have the same problem. Like I never anticipated building on the project this much, like adding this many features. And so things would be a bit unstable. I would be like chasing trails of bugs to try and get things like working well. Yeah, we finally made it. It's been a long process, but super proud, and like the reception of the game is like exceeded all my expectations. So it's like, of course, yeah, of course, it's worth it.
Amazing. Yeah, a lot of things in there that I want to touch on, but I'm curious about the pitching process and the looking for a publisher process for a game that is as unique and strange, frankly, not in a bad way, but different as Lushfoil is. What was that pitching process like as you were exploring and reaching out to different publishers? Do you remember if there were maybe publishers that thought that the game was too weird or maybe not marketable? What were those conversations like that eventually landed you with Annapurna, which we can talk about, but the failures that led to Annapurna because the game is just so different.
I think in that sense, I got pretty lucky. Like Annapurna was one of the first few publishers that I pitched to. I had a few others like reach out to me and ask for interviews, and then so we would have a couple of discussions, and then most of those discussions just led to, sorry, we've decided not to pick this up, and like, which is
Yeah,
totally understandable. Like, I find it hard to, yeah, pitch my own game. Like, I feel like I'm not very good at explaining it. It's a very like left field kind of thing, but I'm super grateful. Like, there's one guy, Jeff at Annapurna, who was really really like vouched for me in my projects, which I have no idea why, but
cool.
I'm like
Yeah,
incredibly grateful. He put it in front of his team, and then which eventually led on to like getting a contract signed and things like that. But yeah, I'm not sure what convinced them, but I think I think I had like a fairly solid pitch to start with. Like I recorded a good amount of gameplay and like did a really solid commentary through like the first 30 minutes
okay.
of the game. I think that kind of stuff helps. And I guess you just have to be at the right point in your projects. Like, obviously, you might not be finished at that point, but it has to be like cohesive and finished enough that it's like presentable.
Yeah,
Yeah, which can be hard to
yeah.
decide when that is, but yeah, that's sort of how it worked out.
Now with that pitch and sort of internal demo that you sent to publishers, do you remember what kind of things you were talking about as you were narrating those first 30 minutes of the game?
I think I still have the video somewhere, but I was just like explaining how the game presents itself mostly. Like, as a developer, your mind is surrounded by all of the game concepts, and you've been thinking about them for a long time. You just have to like step all the way back to the start and think, okay, how does the game present itself to someone who's coming to it completely blind, right?
Exactly, yeah.
So I would go in and just say like the game is very contextless in nature. The objectives don't present themselves very clearly, which is yeah, a good or a bad thing depending on who you are. But I was
Yeah,
really forward about like this is a kind of game for this kind of player that wants to seek out things on them by themselves, and hopefully they find some satisfaction in doing that. I just tried to be very specific about who I was trying to make this for, I guess.
sure. Yeah. And another aspect of the game that you touched on earlier was your personal pursuit of high fidelity. I think that's the thing that probably sticks out most to people when they first see Lushfoil is there's a couple seconds of footage and it is a very visually pleasing game, lots of leaves, lots of a great lighting engine, things like that that are typically associated with a big budget team as you mentioned something like Star Wars Battlefront that is built by hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people. And I'm curious about you as a indie developer and ostensibly a solo developer on this project. When did you decide that high fidelity, like matching the level of your biggest Ubisoft and Sony games, frankly, that level of high fidelity was something that was really important to you? And how did you sort of balance that as a solo developer working on this game?
was a little hard to manage. Like I sort of went in kind of blind and not knowing what kind of workload to expect with how detailed I wanted things to be and how long it would take. I guess I just remained like super patient. For me, I it was always sort of about the graphics. Like I really wanted it to be immersive, and I love games with really dense forests. I felt like that was like something that was somewhat missing from some games. Like, yeah, for me, it was always like a priority because of the kind of immersive nature of it. Like, if it looks real
Sure.
and it has like a consistent art direction with like a soundtrack and things like that, I think it all just like it all combines to be just a more immersive experience. And so that was always the goal. And I had, yeah, my targets set up like very high. And I guess in the start for me, it was never really about the gamification of it. Like I would just
Yeah.
make these environments just for the environments. They would have no game mechanics whatsoever. I guess this sort of ties into like when I was first starting out doing 3D in general, like I would choose a software package, right? I wasn't really into game development at the time, and most of my inspiration was coming from photographers and CG artists and things like that. And so my choice of software package instead of Unity versus Unreal, it was more like I was like thinking of picking up Cinema 4D, which is another like 3D like rendering software package. Yeah, there's Blender obviously, which is a great one that was still around at the time. And then yeah, you have a whole bunch of renderers like Houdini, Redshift, all that were just sort of the topic of conversation among 3D artists. So Unreal was there as well, and I just chose it because it seemed like the most promising. Like the quality of real time graphics was really like, starting to get really good at that point. And the decision paid off, I think, because I used to work freelance. I used to make renders to try and like meet client deadlines and things like that. And having Unreal be in real time, you don't have to wait for a render to finish. You can just like let it record in real
Yeah,
time,
sure.
and then that's the video. I had friends that were doing renders and other software packages, and they would say, "Oh, it's normal for like a 72-hour render for this project."
Oh my god. You can't do much during that time. You just gotta wait.
Exactly. Yeah, your computer's bricked up. It's just rendering frame by frame, doing all this complicated lighting. So Unreal was like a blessing in that sense. Like
Sure.
it was much more iterative and fast. You can make a change and see it immediately and see the final look. Yeah. So my perspective was always from trying to just create something that looks cool. I just wanted to make some dense forests and see how good I could get that to run in real time. And then that having been fairly successful, I just started tinkering around with game mechanics and things that I was inspired by. And yeah, that's how it happened.
To the point of the realism of the game, you mentioned cohesiveness of art direction being something that was important to you to deliver a internally cohesive package. And I'm curious where you sort of, in your mind, draw the line between the pursuit of realism, just looking out your window and knowing intuitively what rocks look like and what trees look like, and art direction, because there is a line. This is not a 100% realistic game. There is an artistic touch to it. So, how did you balance the art direction versus pure pursuit of realism?
That's a great question. I've taken influence from both kinds of projects, like ones that are just like hyper realism. You look at the ground, it's like hyper detailed, versus other projects that are like completely stylized.
What's the most detailed ground you can remember in a game?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, I was really blown away by a game like, do you know the game Unrecord?
Oh, sure. Yeah.
That's a good example of something. I mean, that has its own style for sure, but I think the base of that is just like hyper realism, with like the camera movements
Definitely.
and lighting and textures and things. No, I think like it depends on what you want to make. Like if you're going for something like that, just like hyper realism, that in its own sense is like a form of art direction. I think. Like
Of course. Yeah.
me personally, like I was sort of driven by like my memories and my experience of having explored these places in real life. Like I wanted to create something that best represented that, and I think for me, creating something so directly like realistic without any artistic touch would be kind of like it wouldn't match the experience that I had had, if that makes sense. Yeah, I think art direction is like super important. Like these days, there are tons of like Unreal Engine projects that use like reused assets that everyone's found on like the marketplace and things. And there's nothing wrong with that, but it just seems kind of like there's no source or something, like you can put all the assets together and it'll look good, but there's no like intention behind it. Like there's no feeling that you get from you when you play those kinds of games.
A lack of unique style because you're technically skipping a step of the game creation process by just using other people's assets, which again I agree is fine, but it does leave a different impression on the player versus something that is intentionally created by the developer.
100%. Yeah. Like I use tons of assets. Like I knew as a solo developer I couldn't really allocate the time to make a lot of the assets by hand, so I sourced a lot of them. But to me, it was super important to make sure that they matched like the vision or like the intention of what I was trying to make. So everything was cohesive and everything felt like it fitted. Yeah, some game developers like they have an idea of a really elaborate game concept in their head, and then they forget that like a sense of atmosphere is so important. I guess
Mm-hmm.
it's fine when you're using these assets just as like a backdrop or something to fill in like the main focus, which is the game. Like, but yeah, I don't know. It seems kind of ill intentioned where you reuse the assets and it just seems very vanilla. Like there's no flavor. It's just
Mm-hmm.
like
Sure.
I don't know if I'm explaining this very clearly.
No, yeah, it makes sense. Yeah. With the photography element of the game, we talk about your inspirations for visuals, your inspirations for environments, but the photography is also one of the core elements of the game's design. And it's not the first photography game. There's plenty of other games that have used photography as their basis. And I'm curious if that is something that you've also personally enjoyed in other games. Have you played other photography games that might have inspired this that you're a fan of?
When I was getting into doing some virtual photography, it was sort of before the tools existed, like before games used to put them in as a feature, like as a normal feature. But
A lot of photo modes in games now.
yeah, yeah, which is great, which is awesome. Like I think it's great that it's being recognized as like a way to appreciate like the work the devs have put into their games and things like that. Yeah, back when I started, it was just sort of like PC mods, and like you'd have to like get a free camera mod, and then some mods let you like change some of the camera properties and things, and that's how I first sort of got into it. So it's great to have seen
Yeah,
the
sure.
eventuation of that, and it's become much more mainstream, and people are really into shooting games now. I've seen some amazing screenshots from different titles.
Is that something you've ever pursued yourself, doing photography within photo modes in
A little
games?
bit, yeah. Like I used to put quite a bit of work into it. Like I have a YouTube channel, and like when I first started it out, it used to be me as a hobbyist, like recording scenes from games and like adding music to them. And a lot of my videos are still up. And so I would, yeah, mix and match like game visuals and music that I would find on the internet. And I used to really enjoy that. So a lot of the work that I did back then was, yeah, in games like Star Wars Battlefront, and it would be using mods and unofficial tools and things to get the captures that I wanted. But these days, like if I'm playing a game and it has a photo mode, I'll definitely like stop occasionally to like take a couple shots
Yeah,
if I see something good. Like I liked Red Dead 2's photo mode. I liked Death Stranding's photo mode. I honestly haven't committed to too many games that have a huge commitment in terms of like a 40-hour campaign or anything. I've sort of steered away from most of those games in recent years.
sure. Yeah,
But yeah, those are the games like that often have the photo modes because yeah, AAA games are always like the best looking ones. Um, but yeah, it's just cool that it's like fostered its own kind of community. Like um,
sure. Oh,
yeah,
definitely.
virtual photographers on Twitter and other platforms like are always very prevalent and always asking for their features in modern games. Like we want a photo mode, we want this, and I think it's great. Like I think more devs should lean into it. Devs that weren't necessarily focused on that thing for their game. It's great to see them like consider it at least.
Yeah. And with the spaces in Lushfoil, there's around a dozen, am I right? Different locations that you can visit in this game that are based off of different countries, different real life environments, different weather patterns, and you can change the time of day and all of this stuff. What was the process of designing a level layout? You mentioned that you've visited most or all of these actual places.
Yeah, yeah, I've visited most of them. So there are 10 environments in the game. The ones that I haven't been to are Iceland and China and Nepal. So the first environments I'd made are all ones that I'd been to. Like I had taken a bunch of photos there, and I would use those as like a strict reference when trying to like put scenes together and things like that. Because I was inspired by some photographers that I'm a fan of. These photographers had been to a few of these places like Iceland and Nepal and China, and I was just really like struck by the photos they were able to take, and I thought that they would just make for great, unique locations. I really wanted to include as much variety as I could with the selection. Like, so when you were switching environments, you would feel like you're changing the game that you were playing. That was the goal.
When you were designing your first area that ended up in the final game, what was that process like? You'd done some 3D modeling in the past, but designing something as an explorable level layout that is mimicking reality but not exactly. How did you go about that? Making choices of making sure that it is engaging to play as a game, but also wanting to match something that is realistic.
It's quite a long, involved process, but I would just like stay with strict reference to the photos that I took and the memory that I had of the place. The locations themselves are not one to one, sort of for that reason, like of them being playable. In
Yeah,
reality, you have
exactly.
to walk like quite a long distance between points of interest. And I just thought that if I sort of organized things and made it so that the distance between each part was just more enjoyable instead of having to walk like a really long way. Um, so it's essentially the same experience, but it's just more like curated, I suppose.
Yeah.
So it has all the best parts of what I experienced, but it's also more digestible.
Yeah, it reminds me of the work that Insomniac did with New York in the Spider-Man games, where it's I think the New York in Spider-Man is like 2/3 the size of actual Manhattan, but you get all the landmarks, but they realized that it wouldn't be as fun and because you just would have to go farther, it would just take longer to get places, so they scaled things down just enough to keep all the best parts, but make it more efficient to traverse.
Yeah, it's a smart way to approach it, I think. And also, obviously, like you have constraints. As for me as a solo dev, like I knew my environments couldn't be like too expansive. The ones in the game are like quite expansive. I felt like each one was sort of like around the limit of what I think I could have made. Like there were times
Sure.
I considered like, oh, what if I just expanded this path out like a couple 100 meters out in this direction? But then sometimes I did do that, and then sometimes I just thought, oh, it's just too much. Like, so I feel like I tread that line very very closely. Yeah, and so the project got finished, so it was successful. But
Yeah, yeah. And in terms of limiting the areas, one thing I find fascinating about video games is how you have to create in-world believable blocks to make sure that the player knows that they can't go somewhere. So that's, if it's a tree falling over or a closed gate or something like that, there's plenty of that in Lushfoil. And so, how did you go about creating those believable blocks that were communicating where you can and can't go, but still felt within the world very grounded?
yeah, that's a good question. That was really difficult. Like, because gamers hate like invisible walls, right? Me included. Like, it sucks to go to a place that
Yeah, yeah,
doesn't
yeah.
look like it looks like you can walk there, and then you're just suddenly stopped. So this took like a lot of iteration. Like, thanks to Annapurna, they were able to provide like a lot of iterative testing. I was able to watch lots of footage from people. My first implementation of the game had like a small indication that there was a wall, but not much of an indication. Like I was really careful about making my wall too obvious. I didn't want like a huge wall of bushes that was just like really ominous at the edge of the forest.
Yeah.
I was really trying to avoid that stuff as much as I could. But when I would see players play, it's like they just have a different perspective. Like there's no indication that this area will not be walkable. So I had to go around like very much case by case, like look at each wall and think like is it too obvious? Is it not obvious enough? And I just had to find like the right balance. Like in a lot of cases, it was not obvious enough. So I would have to change the slope of the ground and like put an extra rock at the top or something just to
Okay.
try and balance it, like make it look natural but not invisible. So but yeah, that's a great question. It just took a lot of iteration. Like you're the player always has a different expectation to what you have. So
Yeah, of course. Yeah. The reason I wanted to ask is just it's a process that I, as someone who's not a developer, I've never had to think about before. But as a player, I can definitely remember specific instances of blocks in games. A lot of games will have doors that are boarded over, right? Or the lights are off in a building, indicating you can't go in there. Or even some ones that jump out to me personally is when I was a kid and I played Pokemon Pearl. There's a wall of Psyduck Pokemon blocking off a place that you can't go, and that always stuck out to me as a painfully obvious you can't go this way blockage. And so it's always been in the back of my mind of how do you balance making it believable and apparent, or balancing it being believable and apparent. Those are two very different goals.
yeah, that's a good comparison. Like I played a lot of Pokemon games as well, and like I'm kind of jealous that they could have done that. Like I wish I could have put a bunch of like ducks on my on like the road that I
Yeah,
wanted to walk.
that'd be fun.
Like yeah,
Or a giant boulder or a small tree that blocks your
I
path.
mean yeah,
Yeah.
I did that like in one or two cases. But you know, in some cases I just like I felt like there was nothing I could put, so I just put like an artificial wall that just like turns you around. You know, I sort of tried to vary my approach a bit, like because the game's like going for realism. I can't just put like a a zombie barricade like across like covering the entire road. So I think it might have been a point of frustration for some players, and I totally understand that. But yeah, I feel like I hit a right point in terms of balance and things, and maybe I will have to think of a different game concept so I have some more excuses to do roadblocks and things.
Sure, yeah, that'd be fun. Yeah. Well, you talked about that process of designing these blocks being something that was quite challenging for you, but do you have something that jumps out to you as the most challenging aspect of designing the game? Your first time making a project like this, whether that is just base off starting or something that you had to figure out way later down the line, what was the most difficult part of creating Lushfoil Photography Sim?
Yeah, that's a pretty loaded question. I
That's my job here.
Yeah, like it's hard to pinpoint one thing because I sort of like because it's my essentially my first major project. I had to learn most things from scratch. I never felt like I was strictly like a professional at one thing. I sort of had to become a little bit good at everything in order to get the game done. Optimization was definitely a huge struggle, but to me it was easier because I had more patience with it. Like I was really motivated to have a really well optimized game, despite the amount of plants that I would put in my scene. So I don't know. I guess it was stuff that I had less patience with that I found more difficult just because I had less patience. Like for me, the road to like getting this game on consoles was like quite really rough. I was like learning a lot of console specific systems and guidelines and things that are standard in the industry, but I was just approaching it the first time,
Yeah,
and it was like such a roadblock for me. Yeah, I think. Yeah, sorry, nothing really stands out at the moment, just because
it's
I had to
okay.
give each part of the game like its own attention, and
Hmm.
it was all very time consuming. And so yeah, the things that stick out to me were just often the more tedious ones, like the crashes, the like I finish my game and then I export it, but then it doesn't launch. That kind of thing would just like
Hmm.
drive me up the
Yeah.
wall way more than I would spend hours and hours just putting all of the little plants and details in the environment. But to me, that was fun. Like,
Yeah, that's what you wanted to be doing. And in terms of other challenges, were there any challenges that you faced while trying to market this game? In terms of trailers, in terms of trying to get the word out of what kind of game this is and what kind of players you thought it should reach. You and Annapurna, your publisher, working together to sell this game to people, because at the end of the day, it is a game and a product that you want people to engage with. What challenges did you face while trying to market a game as unusual and different as Lushfoil?
yeah, that's a great question. Like I sort of went into that kind of blind, hoping that I would get some guidance from Annapurna. Like they sort
Yeah,
of done a lot of kind of unique projects, I guess, which
totally.
is sort of why I chose them. And so we sort of just like brainstormed together, like came up with unique ways we could try and pitch it. In the end, like we have no idea like if the marketing was ever like that successful. We just sort of tried to present it for what it was, like explain all of the game's features for what they are, which I think is what a lot of game marketing is these days. You have to just sort of disregard your like artistic intentions for a bit and just like list everything that will the game will achieve for you. So there's that side of marketing, but also like the trailer side, I made most of my trailers, and I would just sort of, yeah, completely
Cool.
disregard any sort of like explanation or appeal or anything. I would just try and make a cool trailer, I guess. So
Hmm.
I guess it was kind of two sides fighting with each other. Annapurna would have lots of like solid ideas that were very beneficial for the game in a marketing standpoint, and then I would be over here like, I want a trailer that doesn't have any text in it. I don't want to explain anything. I just want to like show off some visuals and
Hmm.
stuff. So we just sort of had a bit of both, like
Yeah.
influencing the marketing. But I think it worked out well.
Yeah, well, I mean, you mentioned that the game, in terms of its reception, has exceeded your expectations. In what ways did that happen? I mean, I approached you before the game came out to do the interview. I honestly thought we were going to do it before the game came out, and now the game's actually been out for almost 2 months, and so we now have a little bit of time to reflect and for the game to settle. And so, talk a little bit about the reception that the game has had and the ways that has surprised you.
I guess it surprised me in terms of like as I never saw the game objectives or the progression system as like an approachable thing. Like I thought that it would be like a very small subset of people that would enjoy that kind of thing, and so I think it would have deterred a lot of people. And it definitely, by looking at like the feedback and the comments I've gotten, I think it did deter some people. Yeah, it just exceeded my expectations because people really got around it. I think I just had the right combination of like pacing and like the way I introduced things. I just wasn't sure if it would like resonate or if it would work with people, and I think it turned out to be, yeah, much better than I expected. I tried to make the game for people who don't play games so much, and I guess from a marketing standpoint, it's really hard to pitch a game to people who don't play games because
Yeah.
there are a bunch of hurdles there. Like people who don't play games often don't own any hardware. They don't like even consider that
Mm.
this game is worth playing, just because they're not into games or whatever. But yeah, I've seen some like feedback and comments like, oh, I showed this to my parents or something. I showed this to my grandma, and
Yeah.
like that stuff is awesome. Like
Yeah.
that is like the best thing I've seen probably, and that, yeah, there's nothing better.
Yeah. Well, I can share a story to that exact factor. When I got a code for this game and I was exploring it myself, my mother is someone who does a lot of travel. She lived in Japan, she's been to Morocco, she's been all around the world. And I specifically went to the map that was in Japan with all of the gates, the red gates in it. And I walked through it and I showed her what it looked like. And she's like, oh my gosh, I feel like I've been there before. And that's the kind of thing that I guess is probably the ideal reaction for you, is someone who has maybe even been to these places being like, wow, this is so well rendered and captured in terms of atmosphere that it reminds you of actually being in a place.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, that kind of stuff. That kind of stuff is the best. And just like the general gaming audience as well. Like I personally don't play a lot of games. Like even from the start, I played a handful of games here and there. It felt like I was, I don't know, presenting something to a community that I wasn't sure would be endorsed. Like I think it was very simplistic by nature. A lot of gamers are very like rightfully demanding on like they want like a solid game. Like a lot of people say like graphics. You need to have like a solid game. If you're selling a product, like the game has to be good. It has to have good mechanics and a good feel. And so I felt like my game was intentionally like lacking that in a sense. And I was kind of nervous to put this out there because it's like a valid criticism. Like a lot of people are not looking for that kind of experience.
Yeah, of course.
But I think I was just able to sway enough people, like people who even like wouldn't have considered playing it, ended up enjoying it, kind of thing. Like that's what I really didn't expect, and it looks like it's happened to a certain extent. So yeah, can't be happier.
Yeah, yeah. And one element of this game's popularity and success, something that happened somewhat recently, is that Lushfoil was selected to be an indie select for ID at Xbox, which is a pretty cool honor. And so, how was it? What was your reaction to that? How did they tell this to you? Like, I've never had a game of mine selected for ID at Xbox, so I'm just gonna get the inside scoop from you.
Well, like to be completely honest, like I haven't owned a console for like 10 years. Like I owned a Nintendo
Oh, okay.
Wii. I really don't follow much gaming news whatsoever. I Every time I find that I have coverage from a certain platform, it's like awesome. I'm not really familiar with what that is, but like again, like nothing but gratitude. I'm super grateful that anyone would have picked up and presented this project to someone else. Like, if that happens at all, I'm like, yeah, very thankful. So I don't want to come off as rude by saying I'm just not familiar with the publication,
Yeah.
but yeah, no, it's great. It's great to see, definitely.
Yeah, absolutely. The final thing that I want to talk about is the element that, to my untrained eye, would be the hardest thing to implement. Is that in Lushfoil Photography Sim, you've got your camera, you can take your pictures, and they are saved in internal camera roll. And then anywhere that you took a picture, you can just double click and you teleport right to where you took the picture. And I can't even. I was like, what the heck? No, like no other games do that as a way of almost kind of creating your own checkpoints or your own save point, which is an interesting way to think about it. But how hard was that to implement? Where in the process did you decide that's something you wanted to do, and was it difficult to actually successfully get that immediate teleportation to wherever you took a picture to actually work in the way that it does?
Yeah, that's a good question. Like, I really love that mechanic as well. I was really happy with how it turned out. It had its early stages. At the start, it would be a selection of 4 photos that you took. Like at the start, there wasn't even a photo browser. So you would display
Oh,
some of the
okay.
photos that you took, and then if you wanted to fast travel back to them, you just clicked on it and you could go back there. But it was stages of like creating the photo browser, first of all, so you could see all your photos. And then saving all of the camera information with each photo so you could see it when you were looking at the information. That was another step.
Yeah,
The
exactly.
next step was,
Hmm.
yeah, teleporting back to the photo, which was good, but it wasn't immediate at first. It was sort of like it takes a couple seconds, the screen fades out and comes back in. And then the final step was like just getting that to be immediate. You click the button and then you're just like exactly where the photo was. So yeah, it just took a lot of iteration and different ideas coming in, different influence. And so, yeah, no, I'm really happy you asked me that because that's a mechanic I'm quite proud of. I think if I do any future projects, I'm gonna like keep that as like a thing in my back pocket to just like to use.
Yeah. No, I mean it's something that I'm like, damn, I wish other games did this. It's so intuitive and surprisingly so. It's something I never really. I guess I didn't even think it was really possible, which is why I was so surprised by it. Because you think of something like a picture in a camera roll in a game, and it's just a JPEG. But what you've done is you've turned them into snapshots of exactly where you were in the environment, which is a different way of thinking about taking a photo in a game.
Yeah, I guess like to me the important part was just that it ties into what the game's about. You know, like I think a lot of fast travel systems in games, every game approaches it differently. Like exploration and like saving time going between places. Some games don't let you fast travel, which I think is good sometimes. But I think because the system just ties into its incentive to take more photos, which makes it good. Like if you forget to take
Yeah, yeah,
photos,
yeah.
then yeah, you're kind of punished in the sense that you can't travel back to these places because you didn't take any photos. It's like it just made a lot of sense with like the game theme and like yeah, incentive. So that's why I'm most happy with it, I think.
Yeah. And you mentioned that this was the one of the mechanics you're most proud of in the game, but is there anything else that you implemented that you were really proud of the way that it turned out? There are these sort of extra things like flying a kite or riding a bike or throwing a paper airplane that you implemented kind of as just fun little side activities. Are those things that took a lot of iteration to get working the way they did, or is there any other mechanic that you wanted to kind of explore before we finish off here?
Yeah, I think a lot of those small like discoverables were sort of like spur of the moment ideas. They didn't really take much iteration. It's like in this place a bike would be cool, so I added a bike, and then like a paper plane would be cool. I'd love to see like some wind physics, so I just tried to make a paper plane, and that was it. Like I was just like having fun, sort of.
Yeah.
Something I think I'm most proud of is like have you by chance like reached the credits in the game?
No, I have
Okay.
not.
Like because this is entering spoiler territory, but just the way I was able to figure out like the progression ties in at the end, and you're able to
Sure.
finish. Okay, spoilers from now. The best moments that I've seen players when they discover the portal system in the game and the way that you can travel between environments directly. Just the way I was able to figure that out, and just the way it thematically like messes with your expectations, and like a lot of players will not reach the point in the game where they even find that system. But that, in a
Yeah,
sense, is why it's good. Like when you discover it, it feels like a secret. It feels like you shouldn't have found it.
sure.
And I feel like that's those moments in the game are what resonated the most with people. And it's also done at random. The portal that you discover that takes you to a different environment is random for each player, and that was able to just tie into. There were 9 environments, and because it's an odd number, each environment is matched, and the very last one that you find will take you to the credits. I was just so happy when I like made that as a mechanic and played it myself. I was
Yeah.
I've done it. Like,
Yeah, yeah. Well, and I did like that with something like that and with the teleporting between the photographs, you open yourself up to it is a game that is about simulating reality as close as you can get from its visuals to the different ways that the cameras act believably and recreating actual cameras of different kinds. But you gave yourself the leeway to have a little bit of whimsy with it. And I think if you were a little bit more strict with no, you have to walk everywhere. You can't have that extra little bit layer of fun or creativity to it. I don't think the game would have felt as special. And I like what you were saying about finding something that you feel like you shouldn't find in the game. It is a little bit out of place in a game that is as on the surface level serious as Lushfoil is. But I like that you gave yourself that flexibility to add that extra spark to the game.
oh, thank you, man. Yeah, I tried to like just keep things like contextless. I just would like work on something it was fun and interesting to work on. And yeah, given that that was my like favorite aspect, like it's sort of the influence of like my artistic direction. I really wanted to get weird with it, like and yeah, it's obviously definitely like against the expectation of some players, and I think that does have a negative impact. But at the same time, it's what I was going for from the very start. There's no way I would like reconsider
Yeah.
that decision. And so, yeah, I think if I do a future project, it'll definitely lean into that a bit more. I really want to get a bit more weird with it, make it less strictly like simulator. I guess the reason I did that kind of thing was just to like shake the expectation that it was a simulator genre game. Like you see a game with simulator and you know exactly what to expect.
Okay, so the naming was a specific choice to not have that word be spelled out all the way.
100%. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah, talk about that a little bit. So comparing this to other simulator games, what elements do you think you don't share that makes this not it's a sim, not a simulator?
Yeah. Yeah. I sort of hope some people would recognize that, like having done the naming slightly differently, they would think it's a different kind of project. I think that's how it came across. While I was in development, I was in chat with another dev. Oh, I forgot where he was from, but he had a team. Their team is Magnetic Games, and they're making a game called Photography Simulator. And I found it on Steam, and I thought like that's super interesting. It looks like we're doing the same thing. Like I went in, took a look, and I played the demo during one of the Steam Next Fest periods, and I just thought like it was a bit of relief because we were going for a totally different project. Like his game is named Photography Simulator, and playing the game it was exactly that experience. Like what you'd expect. You'd have quest lines, you'd have cameras, and it was more linear but more like intricate, I guess. Like it sort of had more expansive mechanics and like lens choices and like tons of extra gear. So it's like I thought it was a good experience on its own, and then yeah, again going in a completely different direction for what I was doing. So I was happy that these two projects could like coexist. It's the same for the rest of the simulator genre. Like those games can be really enjoyable for like a niche audience who wants to do that kind of thing, like driving trucks, power washing. What else? I guess that extends to like sports games, like playing sports, NBA, Madden, stuff like that. Yeah, it's its own thing. I was just trying to make it obvious that that's what I'm leading into a little bit, but not completely. And I hope people understood that.
Yeah, and then what about the word Lushfoil? Where does that come from in terms of the name of the game?
Yeah, it's kind of a weird named game. I sort of I feel a bit funny
Yeah,
about it, but it's just like a name I made up with my partner. We are just like thinking of random brand names, and that stuck with me just because it had the word lush in it, and it was just sort of what I was going for. I
sure.
wanted to make a lush game, and so yeah, I hope people are able to make sense of it. Some people think it's a weird name, and I agree, but like I guess it's too late to change it now.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. Well, the game is out there. It is doing very well. Plenty of positive reviews on Steam. It's available on Xbox and PlayStation and Steam, as I mentioned. I will leave links to those storefronts down in the description if you want to go purchase the game yourself. I do recommend it as a game that I think kind of expands the gamer's diet. I played a lot of games, never played a game quite like this. So, Matt, thank you very much for joining me, exploring the history and the stories behind the creation of Lushfoil Photography Sim. I'm very glad to finally have had you on here.
No problem, man. Thank you. This is really fun. Thank you so much.